I think that there's no real reason why ETH can't be one of the most important assets on Earth.
Today, I sit down with crypto veteran EllioTrades.
And I think that with the growth of Ethereum, we'll see the growth
as he shares his Ethereum forecast into 2026.
You saw Paul Atkins came out last week and said, we'd like to see all markets go on chain.
Today, I'm announcing the launch of Project Crypto to enable America's financial markets to move on chain.
He's telling you, Ethereum and DeFi are about to replace the financial system.
Watch today's whole video.
I think a fair price for Ethereum is over per coin because I think it's going to be that important.
Seriously, watch today's whole video. What 5 DeFi altcoins do you think have the most growth potential for an edge in crypto?
The question that you should be asking yourself is, what are the institutions going to buy next?
Click subscribe so you never miss conversations like this, and let's start. Just for the folks at home, what is driving this crypto market right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's the institutional bid, right? And so I believe retail is going to come back. But if you have, if you go into the cryptoverse and look at the YouTube subscribers and views, you'll notice that we're pretty much at new subscriber levels that are at some days paralleling 2019. And so it's, to me, ice cold, right? Like from a retail standpoint. What's not ice cold is that there's institutional FOMO, except it's not on all the coins because institutions, one, can't just degen into new launches and stuff on chain. They don't have the legal ability to do that. They also don't have necessarily the desire to do that. And I think that the story of what's happening right now is a story of maturation for crypto. And it's a story of what I think people feel is that, oh, we're not going to get this easy mode. I disagree. I think it's pretty easy if you are going to focus on assets that the institutions are going to then buy. Because once they start buying, they don't stop, and they're going to continue to grow those assets in network value and market share for forever, feels like. And so I think the pain trade is going to be one if you believe that what you've seen so far means that nothing will ever succeed besides Bitcoin, everything else to zero. I don't agree. I take the opposite side of that. And I think that what we've been waiting on is clear regulations, clear rules of the road, and then also like products and vehicles that institutions can buy legally. And you're seeing that all kind of take place, which is why these treasury companies are going so crazy, is because institutions, they can buy those legally. They can just click in. It's right on the stock market. It's easy for them. And then what we'll see next is, I believe, with the Clarity Act and with the Genius Act passing, the Anti-CBDC Act, and some of the other stuff that you're seeing from the SEC, you're going to see that institutions will now have the green light they need to buy other stuff that is dominant. And I believe that this is a golden era for Ethereum and DeFi. And that's where I believe the very exciting, but maybe unsexy for some of the people who want meme coin-like meth hit gains. Like, I think you're not going to get those from the DeFi protocols, but you might see 10, 15 years of like a super equities like growth, like early Amazon days or something like that, where you're just going to see stuff grow and grow and grow for several years, maybe even a decade plus, where you'll see that system is starting to replace the legacy system. You saw Paul Atkins came out last week and said, we'd like to see all markets go on chain. He's telling you, Ethereum and DeFi are about to replace the financial system. Now, could other L1s like Solana also be instrumental here? Potentially. But I believe Ethereum has proven that this is where BlackRock, this is where Robinhood, this is where Coinbase, this is where the big boys are setting up shop. And I think that you'd be foolish not to really give this the benefit of the doubt that institutions are going to come in and they're going to push these networks up significantly in value, all while retail have kind of checked out. And so it's an interesting moment. I think DeFi is not talked about as much as it should be right now, but DeFi is the story of this year going forward, in my opinion, just like Bitcoin has been the story over the last several years. But really, the institutional adoption of Bitcoin is still early in its process. There's treasury companies and all that. But I think that the next wave is the institutional adoption of ETH and DeFi.
For crypto, do you believe that this cycle is different or history is rhyming? Meaning, do you think we're going to top it at the end of this year, bear market in 2026, or do we just grind upwards into the midterms of 2026?
I do not believe that we're going to see a market top in Q4. I think we'll find out soon. It could happen. Right? We might see a parabolic. Yeah, we'll see. It doesn't feel that way. It certainly doesn't feel that way. It just doesn't feel like it's moving fast enough. And what I hope happens is that that's not what happens. I hope that we end up seeing an extended cycle that goes on for years and years. And I think that there's a chance that we will. Now, could things repeat? This time's not different. Saying this time is different has been obviously the path to hell forever. But I don't really feel like this time is the same. And it's just the way that institutions work, right? They don't want to 100x. They're not going to hold for 100x. Once things get a little out of their, once one coin or one asset goes too high up, they sell some. That's just how institutions work. They have to rebalance. They have mandates. They have rules that they play by. And so as these assets mature, the upside gets a little bit, it's damp, right? And so it's not as crazy, but the downside is also not as crazy. So I think what you've seen on Bitcoin is like this up and down kind of rocking upward, grinds up, then it sells off, then it grinds up more, then it sells off. And that's just kind of how institutions trade. Once you get out of, a 20% price move, institutions tend to take some off, right? And so that's what I think will happen for the asset class as a whole, is that we'll just continue to see Wall Street start to put passive flows into this industry. But we haven't seen that spark of retail, which is usually when you get this sort of emotional premium crazy rallies. I think it's possible, but I think that you should be looking more at not at necessarily the prices to indicate when that's going to happen. You should be looking at the YouTube metrics. Look at YouTube subscribers. Look at YouTube views. That's a great indicator of if retail are here and there's a mania going on and they're ice cold. Like we're really at ice cold metrics right now. So who's the buyer? The buyer is all institutional. They are much more methodical, much more adult. And the question that you should be asking yourself is, what are the institutions going to buy next? And I think if you try to if-then this out, like play it out in your head, I think it leads you to DeFi over and over and over again as the place that institutions are dramatically underexposed, but need to be exposed, because this is what's going to define the next era of finance. And we're hearing it from the powers that be. They're going to say, hey, we need stablecoins. What do stablecoins do on chain? They don't just sit there. They go into DeFi. They chase yield. They chase different products. What does it mean to bring markets on chain? Well, markets going on chain means that DEXs are now going to be able to serve securities markets, real estate markets, all kinds of different markets, commodities markets. And why? Because it's better. It's better to trade on chain. The finality is instant. No intermediaries. No no counterparty risk. All these things are massive steps forward that people find them these to be unsexy concepts inside crypto, but they're very sexy concepts to traditional finance. And so while I do believe we will see a traditional mania, I don't think necessarily it has to happen Q4. I wouldn't be surprised if this cycle gets extended well into 2026 and potentially even beyond.
So if that demand continues into the multi-year time frame, what's a fair price for Ethereum by the end of it?
Fair would be different. I don't know what fair price for Ethereum is. I think a fair price for Ethereum is over $50,000 per coin, because I think it's going to be that important. But what will the market give it a valuation for? I don't know, man. I think that we could see ETH make its way well over 15K in 2026. I think that if all of these institutions are about to start building the future of their financial systems on ETH L2s, then it would make sense that Ethereum would gradually make its way up and kind of follow Bitcoin. Bitcoin makes its way to $1 million. ETH would try to make its way to close to $100,000, in time. I think that there's no real reason why ETH can't be one of the most important assets on Earth. And I think that with the growth of Ethereum, we'll see the growth of a lot of the things that kind of burned retail in the prior cycles. And the reason why retail got burned in the prior cycles was that during the manias, the cart got way ahead of the horse, And so it's true that DeFi is a revolution. It's true that stablecoins are a revolution. It's true that NFTs do have value and that people do want to trade this stuff on chain. It's true. But without Wall Street money, without the biggest pools of money being able to flow in, there's just a limit on how far things can go. And so now that we're sort of uncorking that money spigot and letting that money flow in methodically into the industry, albeit slowly, we're going to see that this growth doesn't have a limit. It doesn't have the same ceiling. And so I think people are going to mistake things. They're going to hope it goes much faster than it goes. It's going to go slowly, but they're going to also mistake that it's not going to go as high as they think it might. And I think it's going to go much higher. So I think it's going to take longer and go higher. And I think that if you're patient and you have like the sort of Warren Buffett, Michael Saylor mentality of, hey, I know this stuff is going to win in the long run, and I'm willing to have a low time preference, which is something we used to talk about a lot with Bitcoiners and crypto. Low time preference. I think this cycle, because we had seen it play out so many times before, there was a real, and I felt this is something I made the mistake of doing as well, was becoming really boxed in on that things need to happen in February of 2025 or in January. We were really like, it needed to happen in Q1. And here's the corollary months. And I think having that mentality has been the pain trade. Whereas if you have the mentality of just taking a step back, zooming out and going, hey, they just passed all these laws. For the first time in history, the biggest money pools of money can now buy this stuff. What's likely to happen? And what's the timeline this is likely to happen on? Over the coming 4 years, what's likely to happen? Over the coming 10 years, what's likely to happen? And when you start thinking about 2030, about 2035, the future is pretty clear. Crypto is going much higher. These institutions are going to buy into DeFi. They're going to want to own a ton of ETH. They're going to want to be a part of these key networks beyond Bitcoin. But if you're needing it to happen tomorrow, then you might be frustrated. But if you're willing to wait, for this process to play out, I think that that's the smart play. And I think that there's so much meat on the bone that it really, really will surprise people as to that you can still become quite wealthy by investing in things like ETH, that you can very much so become wealthy if you learn to play and be ahead of the curve on DeFi.
I want to find altcoins early. Like you mentioned, big money isn't able to get into DeFi yet. After the market structure bill, that will be a green light. What 5 DeFi altcoins do you think have the most growth potential that they will get into?
So I do think that Maker and Sky, that ecosystem, being a stablecoin ecosystem and being one of the sort of pioneering DeFi revenue generating ecosystems on Ethereum, that's a big one. I think Athena's a big one. I think that Aerodrome on Base is the chosen winner for the Base chain, and it also has the same rough sort of design as Blackhole, which is a project which, as you know, we've recently launched and has completely eaten market share on Avalanche. And so I think that, and then also Pendle and Syrup are interesting ones. I'm looking for different projects in the DeFi space that I think will fall into that sort of Mag 7 type of DeFi. One of the things people need to understand about DeFi, the more money you put in, the better it works. It's like one of those just add water type situations. The more money's in a DeFi pool, the more useful it is, because the better execution I can get on trades, the better rates I can get on swaps, like all of these things work better with more liquidity, deeper liquidity. So if you're looking for like chosen winners, once they start getting adopted by Wall Street and that big money cannon starts coming in, they're going to maybe become runaway trains to a degree. Like there's a potential risk of that. It's not a guarantee. It's still very early, but there's a potential that some of these sort of magnificent 7 of DeFi could start to really run away, because if you start getting that Wall Street bid, it'll be really hard to catch up, just like, what we've seen with MicroStrategy. They were able to use the Wall Street debt markets to buy Bitcoin. Now it's unlikely anyone will ever catch up to Michael Saylor in their Bitcoin holdings. And so that type of financial engineering, I think that's what we're going to start seeing in DeFi, where once those Wall Street funds start coming into sort of chosen winners in DeFi, and for various reasons, the ones that I mentioned are all standouts. I think that's where, Aave as well. I think that's where you'll start to see potential runaway train type actions, where that Wall Street bid will make it very hard for other protocols to catch up. But as you know, we've just launched a protocol called Blackhole, and we spent a long time focused on the model. The model was something that was the biggest focus of how do you build a model that really chews up and attracts market share and TVL and can actually become a successful protocol as quickly as possible. An interesting fact, over the last few 24-hour periods, Blackhole has done more on-chain revenue than every other protocol on AVAX combined. And this is a protocol that is only in its 3rd week of life, right? This is like not even 3 weeks old. And so it's unbelievable. And at one point over the weekend when I checked it, Blackhole was number 21 ranked crypto protocol in all of crypto by 24-hour revenue, ahead of Uniswap Labs, above Meteora, and knocking on the door of the top 20. So these are the things that happen when you have like really aggressive pieces of technology that have the right model. And so when I look at like Aerodrome, which has a similar model and is integrated soon into Coinbase, like that's when I get really excited, because I think that this model works and it's designed to grow.
Well, Blackhole, undeniably, incredible growth we've seen over the last few weeks. For the folks at home, it's a DEX, but what makes this DEX special? Why is it growing so fast?
So the question is multifold, which is what makes a DEX good. What makes a DEX good is it has a lot of liquidity. So the product that a DEX has is liquidity. And so when you have a ton of liquidity, it makes it so that I can trade even bigger and bigger amounts with really good execution. Meaning if there's a lot of liquidity, I could trade maybe $5 million, $10 million of an asset with really good execution. And so the more money is in the DEX, the better execution, the better it works, right? And so the goal of a DEX is to attract liquidity. And so the model that Blackhole uses is the best that we've seen, and it's one that we took and iterated. That was an existing model that we iterated on and created a new model from with some really important features that made it even better at attracting that liquidity. And that's why you've seen such rapid adoption. Is the model is the best that we've seen in the industry.
I like Ethereum. I like Solana. I just want to find the next Ethereum, the next Solana. Tell me why that's Avalanche.
So I'm not here to tell you that Avalanche is the next Ethereum or Solana. I just saw an opportunity that Avalanche is one of the top chains. It needed this new dose of excitement, and it had an opportunity that we believed by launching on Avalanche, we could completely dominate market share there. That's been proven out. We actually, Blackhole actually became the #1 DEX by TVL and by volumes and revenues within 72 hours. So it was almost instantaneous that Blackhole became the leader on Avalanche. And you're talking about incumbents that had been there for over 4 years. So the Avalanche is a phenomenal chain, phenomenal technology, and I believe that it is undervalued, and I believe that it will go up tremendously in value. But I'm not here to tell you it's going to replace Ethereum. I think that would be that's not what I believe. But at the same time, I think it's a phenomenal tech stack, and it's a wonderful place to be doing business.
Yeah, obviously the question, the next Ethereum, just a catchy question, but
catchy, yeah,
obviously.
Yeah.
You get it. I mean, any person.
I just wanted to be clear. I'm not saying if they're like AVAX, but I do think AVAX is going to run to $100 over the next hopefully 6 months or so. I think it's undervalued. You can see it's been trying to break out, and that would be extremely bullish for Blackhole as well, because that would mean that DEX revenues and volumes would probably go exponentially up.
I'm a Superverse investor. This does directly benefit Super, correct? Or indirectly benefit?
So technically 13% of the Blackhole voting power, which is, you can think of like the revenues, are owned by Superverse, and 10% of the revenues generated by the protocol have been pledged by Superverse to buy back Super. So you have there's no need to sell anything here. That's the biggest thing. The Superverse never needs to sell black tokens. In fact, they never have black tokens. They have only permanently burned tokens. But of all the revenues generated by the Blackhole DEX, Superverse can then start buying back Super on chain. So this is the beginning of Super's buyback era. It has natural revenues from a hit product, and it's really just the first little bit that we've seen of success in Superverse launching these on-chain products. So yeah, we think that the offering and the ecosystem around Super has dramatically improved, and we're excited to show people many more iterations of success in how we expand what's going on with Blackhole, because we're really excited by what happened, but it's really just the beginning. We're talking about, we're not even 30 days in. So there's so much more under the hood that we're excited to show people. But Super is by far the only gaming token that now has a DeFi backbone and benefits from DeFi revenues and buybacks. And so that's extremely differentiated from everything else in gaming. And again, DeFi works today. It has product market fit today. It's about to get adopted by Wall Street, I believe, in the very near future. Gaming, I think of as the sort of mass market onboarding through the application layer. And those are the two ends of the barbell I want to be working on, the deep liquidity side, and then the sort of like attention and application consumer side. And I think that those are both extremely exciting places to be.
Elliot, best advice for crypto investors to take profits?
If you take a screenshot and you're impressed with it and you're showing your friends, take profits.
Damn.
That's the best rule I have, because every time I've taken a screenshot, I look back and I'm like, you can bleep that out. But I'm like, man, I should have sold. So like, that is the time honored test, is if you're so excited about your gains that you're showing off to your friends, sell a little bit. Doesn't have to be all of it, sell a bit.
And Elliot, what do you think? How does the ETH Treasury and the Bitcoin Treasury potential bubble, how does that end? Do you think it's going to be a pain in the end as these things just go crazy? Or how do you think that ends?
I think there's definitely a downside, but I don't think it hits for quite a while. And I also think that the downside may take us to levels that are above where we're at now. It's just too hard. It's too many variables. Full disclosure, I aped into Tom Lee's vehicle. And you essentially have, with the ETH treasuries, you have Tom Lee, and then you have Joseph Lubin's vehicle, you have SBET, and then you have BMNR. And I like Tom's because I think that when you look at the Michael Saylor effect, it's a lot to do with the charismatic leader, and I think that Tom Lee is the most charismatic leader that's done this on the Ethereum side. He's like a mainstay of CNBC. We've been obviously rolling in the Tom Lee bull posts since 2018. I'm sure you remember. Since 2018, it's always been Tom Lee with these amazing price targets. I just like him, man. I like the way he shills the bag, and I think that he's going to be the right guy to bring the ETH Treasury company to fruition. And so I bought some. I'm down on my investment right now a bit, but I think that if anyone's going to pull it off, it could be him. And I'm excited. Hopefully it's reflexive. I've started to actually. I have a ton of Bitcoin. I love my Bitcoin holdings, but I'm become much more excited about getting exposure to what I think of as a very underexpressed ETH trade. ETH is still not even at prior all-time highs. Bitcoin's almost 2x its prior all-time highs. Well, not really almost to it, but significantly over its prior all-time highs. I think that there's so much more in the tank for ETH, and I think that things that are ETH related, especially as these new laws are being passed that feel very Ethereum coded, like I said, the new laws, the comments from the SEC, comments from Trump and his sons, like it feels very Ethereum coded. And so I want to be exposed. And so I think that this treasury company is an interesting play. Though I do think obviously there will be some that raise money to buy Bitcoin or crypto in general, and that they won't have the right debt structure where they might have to pay back some of the debt and then they might get liquidated. There might be a downside. I'm sure for some there are. But I don't think it happens soon. I think it happens down the track, maybe late 2026, maybe even 2027, before we start to see any kind of real downside there. And who knows, that the downside might be ETH falls from 25K down to 10K. We don't know, right? And that might be the devastating part. But us sitting here with ETH at 3,000 something just doesn't feel like we've seen even real price discovery for ETH. So to me, I'm not that worried about it. I actually think that when it comes to these assets, when it's just, hey, have this asset that can go up in value, that's great. When there's getting back to the DeFi yield stuff, I think that treasury companies become very interesting when they're productive assets. And that's something that Wall Street, I think, is going to become extremely excited about, because we know that the yields in crypto can be supernatural and they can be extremely exciting. And so, for example, like a DEX yield, I think that would be extremely exciting for Wall Street to understand how to get exposure to on-chain revenue streams. Like that kind of a treasury company is interesting because it's not just, hey, we're buying this and we're hoping number goes up. It's, hey, there's a productive asset, it creates yield, it's a new type of financial product, and we're packaging it up in a way that's easy for Wall Street to access. So you don't need to be, with your ledgers on chain, adding liquidity, doing all this crazy stuff. Like, don't worry about all that. We'll put it under the hood. So that's where I think stuff gets really interesting with the digital asset treasuries. And I think we haven't seen the full expression of DATs yet. I think that it's still early in that life cycle, and that the, infinitum copycat Bitcoin treasury companies, I think it's good. I think it's good for a little bit, but I think that that excitement will wear off. Whereas I think that for some of the more exotic instruments, if they're packaged right, those could be real hit and find product market fit with Wall Street.
Elliot, this is why I subscribe to you. Links for your stuff down below. I want to have you back by the end of the year, revisit some of this stuff. But final thoughts for the Altcoin Daily audience.
Just stay bullish, guys. Stay bullish. We live in the most extraordinary of times. And if you keep a low time preference, and remember, the bankers are truly coming to buy our bags. This is what we dreamed about, but just know it's going to happen a little slower than you want, but I believe we're going to go even higher than you dreamed.